The icy water of the Snake River swirled around Victoria Fairchild's knees as she clutched her swollen belly and fought to maintain her balance on the slippery rocks. With each labored step, the weight of her unborn child threatened to pull her under the rushing current. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the splashes of water as she watched the wagon that had brought her this far disappear around the bend, taking with it the man who had promised her the world but delivered only heartbreak. Colorado Territory, 1876, Victoria had never imagined she would find herself in such dire straits. 6 months ago, she had been a respectable schoolteacher in Philadelphia with dreams of adventure in the West. Then she met Jasper Reynolds, a smooth-talking entrepreneur who painted visions of a new life in the booming silver mines of Colorado. He had courted her, married her in a hasty ceremony, and convinced her to leave everything behind to join him on his journey west. Now, halfway across a treacherous river crossing, with the Wyoming wilderness stretching endlessly around her, Jasper had revealed his true colors. When their wagon had gotten stuck on the rocky riverbed, an argument had erupted. Victoria had suggested they lighten the load, but Jasper refused to part with his mining equipment. "You're the heaviest thing in this wagon," he had sneered, his handsome face twisting into something unrecognizable. "I should have left you back east when I found out you were expecting." The words had stung like a physical blow. Victoria had climbed down to help push, despite her condition. That's when Jasper had made his decision. While she struggled in the knee-deep water, he had whipped the horses and abandoned her, calling back that he never wanted the burden of a wife or child anyway. Now Victoria stood frozen in shock, the current threatening to sweep her away. The water was rising with each passing minute, and the nearest town was at least 10 miles downstream. She tried to take another step but slipped on a moss-covered rock, nearly falling headlong into the rushing river. "Hold on, madam," a deep voice called from the bank. Victoria turned to see a tall figure dismounting from a chestnut mare. The man wore the practical garb of a cattle driver, worn leather chaps over denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. Without hesitation, he removed his boots, secured them to his saddle, and waded into the river toward her. "Don't move," he instructed as he approached, his voice steady and reassuring. "Rivers rising with the snowmelt. These rocks get mighty treacherous." Victoria remained still, watching as the stranger navigated the current with confident strides. When he reached her, she could see his face clearly weathered by sun and wind, with kind eyes and a strong jawline partially covered by several days' growth of beard. "Name's Finn Callahan," he said, assessing her predicament. "Looks like you're in a spot of trouble." "Victoria Fairchild," she replied, her voice trembling. "My husband, he left me here." The admission felt like glass in her throat. Finn's expression darkened momentarily. "No man worth his salt would leave a woman in your condition stranded in a river." He glanced downstream where the wagon had disappeared. "We'll worry about him later. Right now, let's get you to safety." Without further discussion, he positioned himself beside her. "Put your arms around my neck, Mrs. Fairchild. I'm going to carry you across." Victoria hesitated only a moment before complying. She was raised to maintain propriety, but her current circumstances had rendered social niceties irrelevant. As Finn lifted her with surprising gentleness, she felt her body relax slightly for the first time since Jasper had abandoned her. "I apologize for the impropriety," she whispered as he secured his hold beneath her knees and back. "Nothing improper about saving a life, madam," Finn replied, carefully navigating the riverbed, "or 2 lives as it happens." The journey across the remainder of the river seemed endless. Finn moved methodically, testing each step before committing his weight. Victoria could feel the powerful muscles in his shoulders and arms working to keep them both steady against the current. Unlike Jasper's cologne-scented embraces, Finn smelled of leather, horsehair, and open prairie honest smells that somehow comforted her. When they finally reached the opposite bank, Finn gently set Victoria on a flat boulder before retrieving his horse. The mare followed obediently, picking her way across the shallower section of the crossing. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Finn asked, draping his dry jacket around Victoria's shoulders. No, she answered, though her voice wavered. Just cold and frightened. Her hand instinctively went to her belly. The baby moved during the crossing. I think we're both all right. Finn nodded, his relief evident. Good, that's good. He glanced around, taking in the vast landscape. Next town's Cripple Creek. It's about 15 miles south. There's a doctor there who can make sure everything's as it should be. Victoria's face fell. 15 miles, I don't think I can walk that far. You won't be walking, Mrs. Fairchild. Finn gestured to his horse. Maybelle here will carry you. She's steady as they come. But what about you? Finn smiled, revealing a small dimple in his left cheek. I've walked farther for less important reasons. Victoria studied him, trying to understand why this stranger was being so kind. In Philadelphia, men like Finn Callahan would barely warrant a second glance from ladies of her station. Yet here, in this unforgiving wilderness, she saw something in him that Jasper had never possessed: genuine integrity. Thank you, Mr. Callahan, she said softly. I don't know what would have become of me if you hadn't arrived when you did. Just Finn, please, he replied, helping her to her feet. And don't thank me yet. We've still got a journey ahead of us. With careful movements, Finn helped Victoria mount Maybelle, adjusting the stirrups to accommodate her. The mare stood patiently, seemingly understanding the delicate nature of her new passenger. The river crossing shook me, Victoria admitted as Finn gathered Maybelle's reins. I'm worried about the baby. Finn's expression grew serious. We'll get you to Doc Wallace as quick as we safely can. He delivered half the children in Teller County, including my sister's twins, last year. As they began their journey toward Cripple Creek, Victoria found herself studying her unexpected rescuer from her perch atop the mare. Finn Callahan walked with the easy stride of a man accustomed to covering long distances on foot. His broad shoulders carried the burden of his saddlebags without apparent effort, and his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, alert to any potential dangers. Are you from Cripple Creek, Mr. Finn? Victoria asked, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. Born and raised, he replied. My father came west during the gold rush of '59, found enough color to buy a small ranch instead of continuing to dig holes in the ground, said a man should work under the sky, not beneath it. Wise words, Victoria commented. What brings you out this way, so far from home? Delivering a string of horses to the overland stage station up north. Was on my way back when I heard you. He glanced up at her. Providence, I suppose. Victoria nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Indeed. They continued in companionable silence for a while, the vast Wyoming landscape rolling out before them. Unlike the crowded streets of Philadelphia, there was a magnificent emptiness here that both terrified and exhilarated Victoria. Before Jasper's betrayal, she had been starting to fall in love with the West's wild beauty. May I ask what brought you out here, Mrs. Fairchild? Finn inquired eventually. Not many Eastern ladies venture this far west, especially in your condition. Victoria hesitated, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. How foolish her story would sound to this man who clearly understood the realities of frontier life. My husband Jasper convinced me that Colorado held our future, she finally said. He spoke of silver mines and opportunities. I was teaching at a ladies' academy in Philadelphia, but the idea of a new beginning was appealing. She paused, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. When I discovered I was with child, Jasper seemed pleased at first. We married quickly and set out west almost immediately. Finn listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. Victoria continued, finding unexpected relief in sharing her tale. The journey changed him, or perhaps revealed his true nature. He became impatient, critical. When we reached the river today, her voice faltered. He said I was a burden, that he never wanted a family holding him back from his fortune. Some men aren't worthy of the name, Finn said quietly. Your husband's one of them. Victoria nodded, fighting back tears. I see that now. I just don't understand how I could have been so blind. Dreams can do that, Finn offered. Make us see what we want to see instead of what's truly there. He adjusted his hat, squinting at the western horizon. We should make camp soon. There's a sheltered spot by a creek about a mile ahead. You need rest. The mention of rest made Victoria suddenly aware of her exhaustion. The events of the day, combined with the physical strain of her condition, had drained her completely. She nodded gratefully, too tired to protest. When they reached the creek, Finn helped Victoria dismount with careful hands. He worked efficiently to establish their camp, unrolling his bedroll for her while gathering wood for a small fire. Victoria watched him, feeling helpless in her inability to assist. "I apologize for not being able to help," she said as Finn arranged stones around the nascent fire. He looked up, genuine surprise on his face. "You're carrying precious cargo, Mrs. Fairchild. Your job right now is to rest and keep that little one safe." His expression softened. "Besides, you've had a trying day. No one expects you to set up camp after what you've been through." The simple kindness of his words brought fresh tears to Victoria's eyes. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed by her emotional state. "Crying's natural," Finn said, pretending not to notice as he busied himself with the fire. "My sister cried at least 3 times a day when she was expecting. Once because a rabbit looked at her in a judgmental way, according to her." His lips quirked into a small smile. "Threw a biscuit at my brother-in-law when he laughed about it." Victoria found herself smiling despite everything. "That's actually somewhat reassuring to hear. I've been overwhelmed by the strongest emotions lately." "I'd wager being abandoned mid-river would bring strong emotions to anyone, expecting or not," Finn replied, his voice gentle but containing an undercurrent of anger that wasn't directed at her. The fire caught and began to crackle merrily, bringing welcome warmth as the evening chills settled around them. Finn produced jerky, hardtack, and dried apples from his saddlebags, along with a small pot for coffee. "It's not much, but it's filling," he apologized, offering Victoria the best portions. "It's wonderful," she assured him, suddenly ravenous. She couldn't remember when she had last eaten. Jasper had been impatient with stops for meals during their journey. As they ate their simple supper, Victoria found herself studying Finn more closely. Unlike the polished men of Philadelphia society, everything about him spoke of practical capability. His hands were strong and calloused but moved with surprising grace as he prepared their meal and tended the fire. His face, though weathered by sun and wind, had a youthful quality that made her wonder about his age. "How old are you, Finn?" she asked suddenly, then blushed at her impropriety. "I apologize, that was terribly forward of me," Finn chuckled. No harm in an honest question. "I'm 28 come September, and you?" 23 last month, she replied. "Though I feel decades older after today." Finn nodded understandingly. "Hard experiences age us faster than years ever could." He poured her a cup of coffee, then hesitated. "Is coffee all right in your condition?" "I have some willow bark tea that might be better." The thoughtful consideration touched Victoria deeply. "Coffee is fine, though perhaps weaker than you might prefer." She accepted the cup gratefully, warming her hands around it. "You seem to know a fair bit about expectant mothers." "Like I mentioned, my sister has 3 little ones now. I helped see her through each time when her husband was working their claim." He shrugged modestly. "Not much, just fetching and carrying mostly, but you learn what helps and what doesn't." As darkness fell completely, the stars emerged in breathtaking clarity. Victoria gazed upward, momentarily forgetting her troubles in the face of such majesty. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "In Philadelphia, the gas lamps and coal smoke obscure most of the stars." "That's one thing we've got plenty of out here," Finn replied, following her gaze. "Sky and space. Makes a man feel small sometimes, but in a good way." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the crackling fire and distant chorus of night creatures the only sounds. Victoria felt a strange peace settling over her despite the uncertainty of her situation. Something about Finn Callahan's steady presence reassured her in a way she couldn't quite articulate. "You should get some rest," Finn eventually said, noticing her struggling to keep her eyes open. "We'll start early tomorrow to reach Cripple Creek before midday." Victoria nodded, suddenly aware of her bone-deep exhaustion. Finn helped her settle onto his bedroll, adding his saddle blanket for extra warmth. "Where will you sleep?" she asked, concerned. "I'll keep watch for a while," he answered, stoking the fire. "Don't worry about me, been sleeping under stars since I was knee-high to a grasshopper." As Victoria drifted towards sleep, She heard Finn softly humming a tune she didn't recognize, something plaintive and beautiful that seemed perfectly suited to the vast wilderness surrounding them. Her last conscious thought before slumber claimed her was that perhaps, in the midst of disaster, she had found something unexpectedly precious. Morning arrived with the cheerful songs of meadowlarks. Victoria opened her eyes to find Finn already awake, preparing a simple breakfast of more hardtack softened in hot coffee. Her body ached from the previous day's ordeal and from sleeping on the ground, but she felt strangely rejuvenated. "Sleep well?" Finn asked, handing her a tin cup of water. "Better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the cup gratefully. "Though I fear I'm not accustomed to such accommodations." Finn smiled. "Few are at first. The ground gets softer with time, or maybe we just get tougher." After a quick breakfast, they resumed their journey toward Cripple Creek. The morning was gloriously clear, with the kind of piercing blue sky that seemed unique to the Western Territories. Victoria rode Maybelle while Finn walked alongside, occasionally pointing out landmarks or identifying the calls of birds unfamiliar to her eastern ears. "What will you do when we reach town?" Finn asked after they had been traveling for about an hour. The question had clearly been on his mind. Victoria sighed. "I honestly don't know. I have some money sewn into my petticoat. My grandmother taught me never to trust a man completely with my financial security." She smiled wryly. Perhaps the wisest lesson she imparted, though I failed to heed it properly. "Sensible woman, your grandmother," Finn remarked. Cripple Creek's growing fast with the new silver strikes. The hotel's decent enough, and there's boarding houses for respectable women. And after the baby comes, Victoria voiced her deeper fear. What becomes of a woman alone with a child in a place like this? Finn was quiet for a moment, considering. "West isn't as harsh on such circumstances as back east, in my experience. People understand life happens differently out here." He glanced up at her. "There's work for educated women, the mining camps looking to establish a proper school. Until now, Widow Harrigan's been teaching the children in her front room, but there's too many now." Hope flickered in Victoria's chest. "I was a teacher. It's what I trained for." "Then there you go," Finn said encouragingly. "Cripple Creek might just need you as much as you need it." As they crested a small rise, Victoria caught her first glimpse of their destination nestled in a valley below. Cripple Creek was larger than she had imagined, with several streets of wooden buildings, a church steeple rising prominently from the center, and the unmistakable bustle of a prosperous frontier town. "It's bigger than I expected," she commented. "Been growing steady since '70, Finn explained. "Silver brought the first wave, but it's good cattle country too. My father saw that early on." They approached the town along a well-traveled road that joined with the main street. Victoria became acutely aware of her bedraggled appearance as they entered the settlement. Her dress, though of good quality, was stained with river water and dust. Her hair, once neatly pinned, had mostly escaped its confinement during her ordeal. "Perhaps we could visit the doctor before I'm seen by too many people," she suggested anxiously. Finn nodded understandingly. "Doc Wallace's office is just past the general store. We'll head there directly." Several curious glances were cast their way as they progressed down the main street. Victoria kept her eyes lowered, uncomfortable with the attention, while Finn acknowledged acquaintances with brief nods but didn't stop to chat. Dr. Wallace's office was a neat clapboard building with a small sign indicating his profession. Finn helped Victoria dismount before tying Maybelle to the hitching post. "Dr. Wallace is a good man," Finn assured her as he escorted her to the door. "Studied back east before coming west, knows his business." The doctor himself answered their knock, a man of about 50 with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles and salt and pepper hair. He took in Victoria's condition and disheveled appearance with a professional glance. "Finn Callahan," he greeted warmly before turning his attention to Victoria. "And who might this lady be?" "Victoria Fairchild," Finn answered. "Found her stranded in the Snake River crossing yesterday. Her husband abandoned her there." The tight set of his jaw conveyed his opinion of this action. "She's expecting, and I thought you should examine her after such an ordeal." Dr. Wallace's expression darkened momentarily at the mention of Victoria's abandonment, but his professional demeanor quickly returned. "Of course. Please come in, Mrs. Fairchild." Victoria hesitated, looking back at Finn. Despite having known him less than a day, he represented her only security in this unfamiliar place. Sensing her uncertainty, Finn said, "I'll wait right here if that puts your mind at ease. Need to see to Maybelle anyway, and then I'll fetch you something proper to eat from the hotel." Reassured, Victoria followed the doctor inside. The examination room was surprisingly well appointed, with clean linens and modern medical equipment that would not have been out of place in Philadelphia. Dr. Wallace's examination was thorough but respectful. He listened to the baby's heartbeat, checked Victoria for any injuries from her river ordeal, and asked pertinent questions about her pregnancy thus far. "Everything appears to be progressing normally," he finally pronounced. "The baby's heartbeat is strong, and I don't see any ill effects from your misadventure. However, I would advise rest for the next several days. The stress alone warrants caution." Victoria nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you, doctor. I've been so worried." "When is your confinement expected?" he asked, washing his hands in a basin. "Late August, according to my calculations," Victoria replied. Dr. Wallace nodded. "Approximately 3 months then, plenty of time to establish yourself here if that's your intention." The question brought Victoria's uncertain future into sharp focus again. "I believe so. Mr. Callahan mentioned there might be need for a teacher." "Indeed there is," the doctor confirmed. "The town council voted just last month to build a proper schoolhouse. It should be completed by the time you're recovered from childbed." He regarded her thoughtfully. "Of course, they'll want to know your qualifications." "I graduated from the Women's College of Philadelphia and taught at the Fairmont Ladies' Academy for 2 years before my marriage," Victoria stated, some of her old confidence returning as she spoke of her profession. Dr. Wallace looked impressed. "Those are excellent credentials. I'm on the town council. I'd be happy to introduce you to the others once you're settled." As Victoria prepared to leave, the doctor hesitated. "Mrs. Fairchild, regarding your situation, abandoned women sometimes face difficulties in new communities, but Cripple Creek isn't like everywhere else. Judge Wilkins's wife runs a respectable boarding house where you'd be welcome, and people here understand that life in the territories comes with hardships not of our choosing." Victoria blinked back unexpected tears at his kindness. "Thank you, doctor. That means more than you know." When she emerged from the office, Finn was waiting as promised, Maybelle contentedly munching oats from a feed bag. "All is well?" he asked, his concern evident. Victoria nodded. "Dr. Wallace says the baby and I are both healthy, though he recommends rest for a few days." Relief spread across Finn's features. "That's good news." He offered her a small paper parcel. "Brought you a sandwich from the hotel, figured you might be hungry." The thoughtful gesture touched Victoria deeply. As they sat on the doctor's porch steps while she ate, Finn outlined his plan. "Spoke with Mrs. Wilkins while you were being examined. She has a room available at her boarding house strictly for respectable ladies. It's clean, well-kept, and the food's good." He hesitated. "If that meets with your approval, of course." Victoria studied him, this man who had stepped into her life at her darkest moment and had shown nothing but consideration since. "Why are you helping me like this, Finn? You've gone far beyond what any stranger might do." Finn's gaze dropped to his boots momentarily before meeting her eyes again. "My mother was left in circumstances not unlike yours. She was carrying my sister when my father was injured in a mine collapse. The doctor gave him 6 months to live." His voice grew quieter. "The man she'd come west with as a bride found the prospect of raising another man's children and caring for a dying husband too burdensome. He left one night without a word." "I'm so sorry," Victoria whispered. Finn shrugged, though the old pain was visible in his eyes. "Father defied the doctor's prediction. Lived another 15 years long enough to build a good ranch and see us all grown, but I never forgot how people in Cripple Creek rallied around Mother in her hour of need." His eyes held her steadily. "Just paying forward what was done for my family." The simple honesty of his explanation moved Victoria profoundly. In Philadelphia, charity often came with expectations of gratitude and deference. Finn's help was offered in a spirit of genuine human connection that transcended social obligation. "Then I accept your assistance with gratitude," she said softly, "and the room at Mrs. Wilkins's boarding house sounds perfect." They finished their meal in companionable silence before heading toward the boarding house, a two-story structure with a welcoming porch adorned with flowering plants in barrels. Mrs. Wilkins herself greeted them, a stately woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner that reminded Victoria of her grandmother. "So you're the young lady Finn mentioned," she said, assessing Victoria with keen eyes that missed nothing but judged kindly. "Come in, dear. You look dead on your feet." The interior of the boarding house was spotlessly clean and tastefully furnished with a mixture of frontier practicality and Eastern comforts. Mrs. Wilkins showed Victoria to a small but pleasant room on the second floor, complete with a real bed, washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. Bathrooms at the end of the hall, hot water available twice daily. Meals are served promptly at 7, noon, and 6. Laundry day is Tuesday. No gentlemen callers beyond the front parlor. Mrs. Wilkins rattled off the rules efficiently before her expression softened. "Doctor Wallace sent word about your condition. Rest as much as you need these first days. I'll have trays sent up." "Thank you for your kindness," Victoria said sincerely. Mrs. Wilkins patted her hand. "Been where you are, more or less. Out here we look after our own and you're one of ours now." When they returned downstairs, Finn was waiting awkwardly in the front parlor, hat in hands. Victoria was struck again by how different he was from the men she had known in Philadelphia. There was nothing affected or artificial about him. "You're all settled then?" he asked. Victoria nodded. "Yes, thanks to you." "Well," Finn said, suddenly seeming uncertain, "I should be getting back to the ranch. My father will be wondering what delayed me." An unexpected sense of loss swept through Victoria at the thought of his departure. This man who had saved her life was about to walk away, and she might never see him again. "Will I see you again?" she found herself asking. A smile warmed Finn's features. "Cripple Creek's not so big that folks don't cross paths regular like. But I'd be pleased to call on you proper once you're rested. Perhaps Sunday after church." Victoria felt a blush rising to her cheeks. "I'd like that very much, Mrs. Wilkins, who had been pretending not to listen while arranging flowers nearby, gave an approving nod that both Victoria and Finn pretended not to notice. As Finn prepared to leave, he hesitated. "Mrs. Fairchild, Victoria, if you need anything at all before Sunday, send word to the Rocking Sea Ranch. It's about 3 miles east of town." "I will," she promised. "And Finn, thank you for everything." He tipped his hat with a warm smile that made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "My pleasure, madam." As Victoria watched him mount Maybelle and ride away, she placed a protective hand over her unborn child. "We're going to be all right," she whispered, feeling the truth of it for the first time since Jasper's betrayal. "We've found a good place." The following days passed in a blur of rest and adjustment to her new surroundings. True to her word, Mrs. Wilkins saw that Victoria wanted for nothing, bringing meals to her room and providing clean clothes borrowed from her daughter who had recently moved to Denver. By the third day, Victoria felt strong enough to join the other boarders, 3 unmarried schoolteachers and an elderly widow, for meals in the dining room. They accepted her with kindness, asking few questions about her circumstances, but offering friendship freely. On Friday afternoon, a delivery arrived from the general store: fabric for new dresses, undergarments, a nightgown, and various toiletries. The accompanying note reads simply, "To help you start anew, FC." "That Callahan boy," Mrs. Wilkins commented with approval when Victoria showed her the gifts. "His mother raised him right." Victoria's heart warmed at Finn's thoughtfulness. The gifts were practical rather than frivolous, selected with careful consideration for her needs. It was so different from Jasper's showy but ultimately meaningless gestures during their courtship. Saturday brought a visit from Judge Wilkins and 2 other town council members, arranged by Dr. Wallace. They interviewed Victoria about her qualifications and teaching experience with respectful interest. "We had planned to send for a teacher from Denver," Judge Wilkins explained, but finding someone of your caliber already here seems providential. The position is yours if you want it, though we understand you'll need time after your blessed event before starting." "Thank you," Victoria replied, overwhelmed by how quickly her prospects had improved. "I would be honored to accept." By Sunday morning, Victoria felt truly hopeful for the first time since her abandonment. Mrs. Wilkins helped her style her hair and loaned her a shawl to complement one of the newly altered dresses made from Finn's gift of fabric. "He's coming to escort you to church," Mrs. Wilkins informed her with barely concealed approval. "First time that boy's been to services in months, if his mother's complaints are anything to go by." Victoria felt a flutter of anticipation that had nothing to do with the baby's movements. She tried to temper her expectations. Finn had been kind, certainly, but his attention surely stemmed from compassion rather than any deeper interest. After all, what man would court a pregnant woman abandoned by another? When Finn arrived, however, his expression upon seeing her suggested something beyond mere neighborly concern. He was freshly shaven, his usually wind-tousled hair neatly combed, and he wore a clean shirt with a string tie under his best vest. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Fairchild," he said with such genuine admiration that Victoria blushed. "Please call me Victoria," she replied. "And thank you for the fabric and other items. It was incredibly thoughtful." "Figured you'd need some things to get started," Finn said, seeming almost embarrassed by her gratitude. "My mother helped choose what might be appropriate." The mention of his mother intrigued Victoria. "I look forward to meeting her. You'll get your chance today," Finn replied as he offered his arm to escort her down the steps. "She'll be at church. Been pestering me about you since I told her how we met." The small church was filled nearly to capacity when they arrived. Victoria felt the curious gazes of the townsfolk as Finn led her to a pew where an older couple was already seated. The woman, clearly Finn's mother from the similarity of their eyes, assessed Victoria with frank interest. "Ma, Pa, this is Victoria Fairchild," Finn introduced. "Victoria, my parents, Martha and Elias Callahan." Martha Callahan's face broke into a warm smile. "So you're the young lady who's had our Finn in such a state all week. Welcome to Cripple Creek, dear." Elias Callahan, a robust man with the same tall build as his son though stooped slightly from what Victoria guessed were old mining injuries, shook her hand firmly. "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Fairchild. Our boy told us what happened at the river crossing. Shameful behavior from a man who took vows." "Thank you for your kindness," Victoria replied, touched by their immediate acceptance. "And please call me Victoria." Throughout the service, Victoria was acutely aware of Finn beside her. There was a steadiness to his presence that calmed her lingering anxieties about her future. When their hands accidentally brushed as they shared a hymnal, the brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. After the service, it seemed half the town wanted to meet the newcomer. Victoria was introduced to so many people that the names became a blur, though everyone was welcoming. Several of the women, upon learning of her condition and circumstances, immediately offered baby clothes and advice. "Told you Cripple Creek looks after its own," Martha Callahan said approvingly as they watched another woman hurry off to fetch a basket of baby things she insisted Victoria must have. "Now, you're coming to Sunday dinner at the ranch. No arguments." The Callahan Ranch was everything Victoria imagined a prosperous western cattle operation would be: a sturdy main house built of local timber, several well-maintained outbuildings, and rolling pastures dotted with healthy cattle. From the wide porch, the view of the mountains took her breath away. "Your home is beautiful," she told Martha sincerely as they entered the comfortable main house. "Elias built most of it himself," Martha replied with obvious pride. "Started with just 2 rooms when we first married, added on as the family grew and the ranch prospered." Sunday dinner was a revelation to Victoria. Unlike the formal, stilted meals of her Philadelphia upbringing or the hasty, tension-filled ones with Jasper during their journey west, the Callahan family dinner was filled with laughter, storytelling, and genuine warmth. Finn's younger sister Annabelle and her husband Thomas joined them, bringing their 3 children who regarded Victoria with open curiosity. "Are you going to be our new teacher?" 7-year-old Emma asked directly. Miss Harrigan smells like cabbage, Emma. Annabelle scolded while the adults tried not to laugh. Victoria smiled at the child. I will be teaching once the new school is built and after my baby arrives. Uncle Finn says your baby doesn't have a daddy, 5-year-old Samuel piped up with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. My friend Billy doesn't have a mama because she went to heaven. Is your baby's daddy in heaven? An awkward silence fell over the table. Victoria saw Finn tense beside her, clearly uncomfortable with his nephew's innocent question. Samuel, that's not appropriate conversation for the dinner table, Annabelle intervened quickly. Victoria gently touched Annabelle's arm. It's all right, she said before addressing Samuel. No, your friend Billy's situation is different. My baby's father decided he didn't want to be a daddy. But that's okay because there are many different kinds of families, and all that matters is that children are loved. Martha nodded approvingly at Victoria's handling of the difficult question, while Elias cleared his throat gruffly before changing the subject to the new calf crop. Victoria caught Finn watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster, admiration mixed with something deeper that she couldn't quite name. After dinner, Finn suggested a short walk to show Victoria the ranch, careful to keep the pace gentle in deference to her condition. They strolled toward a small pond where cottonwood trees provided welcome shade in the afternoon sun. I apologize for Samuel's question, Finn said as they watched ducks glide across the water's surface. Children don't always understand what's proper to ask, Victoria smiled. There's no need to apologize. His question was honest and he deserves an honest answer. I'll need to become accustomed to such inquiries if I'm to live and teach in Cripple Creek. They settled on a wooden bench overlooking the pond. For a moment, neither spoke, content to enjoy the peaceful setting and each other's company. Your family is wonderful, Victoria finally said. You're fortunate to have them. I know it, Finn agreed. Wasn't always so appreciative as a younger man. Had wild ideas about striking out on my own, seeing more of the world beyond Colorado. His expression grew thoughtful. Father's accident changed that, made me see what truly matters, Victoria nodded understandingly. Life has a way of clarifying our priorities, often through difficult circumstances. Like being abandoned mid-river, Finn asked gently. Yes, Victoria acknowledged. As terrible as that moment was, I can already see that it's leading me somewhere better than where I was headed with Jasper. She placed a protective hand over her belly. My child will grow up in a community where people truly care for one another. That's worth more than all the silver Jasper was chasing. Finn's hand moved hesitantly toward hers before stopping just short of contact. Victoria, I know we've known each other only a week and your situation is complicated, but I find myself thinking about you constantly. Victoria's breath caught at his words. Finn, please let me finish, he requested softly. I'm not asking for anything right now. You need time to heal, to establish yourself here, to welcome your child into the world. But I want you to know that when you're ready, if you ever feel you could be ready, I would consider it an honor to court you properly. Victoria studied his earnest face, seeing nothing but sincerity in his eyes. In Philadelphia, a declaration like this would have seemed impossibly hasty. Here in the West, where life moved at a different pace and people were judged by their actions rather than social conventions, it felt perfectly natural. I've known you just days, she said slowly, yet I feel I understand your character better than I ever knew Jasper's after months of courtship. You're a good man, Finn Callahan. Does that mean you might consider my suit in time? He asked, hope evident in his voice. Victoria smiled, allowing her hand to bridge the small gap between them to touch his. It means I already am. The weeks that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. True to his word, Finn courted Victoria with respectful patience, calling at the boarding house several times each week and escorting her to church every Sunday. They took short walks through town as her pregnancy progressed, getting to know each other through long conversations about their pasts, their beliefs, and their hopes for the future. Victoria found herself blossoming in Cripple Creek. The town embraced her completely, with many residents bringing baby gifts or offering assistance with her preparations for motherhood. Judge Wilkins arranged for her to visit the construction site of the new schoolhouse, seeking her input on the interior arrangement. Martha Callahan became a particular friend and ally, visiting often to check on Victoria's health and sharing wisdom from her own experiences with childbirth on the frontier. She helped Victoria prepare a small nursery corner in her boarding house room, bringing a cradle that had held both Finn and Annabelle as infants. This belonged to Finn's grandmother, Martha explained as she set up the beautifully carved wooden cradle. It crossed the plains in a covered wagon before him, and it'll serve your little one just as well. As Victoria's time grew nearer, Dr. Wallace increased his visits, ensuring that both she and the baby remained healthy. "Everything looks to be progressing perfectly," he assured her during an examination in early August. "The baby has settled into the proper position. I expect an uncomplicated delivery." On a particularly warm August evening, Finn invited Victoria for a buggy ride to a special spot on Callahan land. Despite her advanced state, she accepted eagerly, tired of being confined to town as her mobility decreased. The destination proved to be a beautiful overlook with views of both the mountains and the sprawling valley where Cripple Creek nestled. A small, sturdy cabin stood in a clearing surrounded by ponderosa pines. "It's lovely," Victoria said as Finn helped her from the buggy. "Whose cabin is this?" "Mine, actually," Finn replied, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Built it myself over the past few years. My father gave each of us children a parcel of land when we came of age. This is mine." He led her to the porch where two rocking chairs waited beside a small table set with a picnic supper. The cabin's interior was visible through the open door, simply but comfortably furnished with handcrafted pieces that spoke of Finn's skill as a woodworker. "You built all this?" Victoria asked, impressed. Finn nodded. "Worked on it in my spare time. Always thought I'd want my own place someday, separate from the main ranch but close enough to help with the operation." They enjoyed their picnic as the sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of orange and pink. Victoria noticed Finn growing increasingly pensive as the meal progressed. "Is something troubling you?" she finally asked. Finn set aside his plate, turning to face her fully. "Not troubling exactly, just important." He took a deep breath. "Victoria, I know we agreed to take things slowly and I've tried to be patient, but with your time so near, there's something I need to ask." Victoria's heart quickened as Finn reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. "I've come to love you, Victoria Fairchild," he said simply. "I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love the way you faced adversity with grace. And I already love this child you're carrying, not because it's mine by blood, but because it's yours." He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful gold ring set with a small, perfect pearl. "This was my grandmother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife." Tears filled Victoria's eyes as she looked from the ring to Finn's hopeful face. "Are you certain?" "Taking on another man's child, I'm certain I want to be this child's father in every way that matters," Finn interrupted gently. "And I'm certain I want to build a life with you right here." He gestured to the cabin and the land surrounding it. "It's not a grand mansion like you might have had in Philadelphia, but this time it was Victoria who interrupted, placing her fingers gently against his lips. "It's perfect, more perfect than any mansion could ever be." She took his hand in hers. "Yes, Finn Callahan, I will marry you." The joy that spread across Finn's face was luminous as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit as though made for her. When he leaned forward to seal their engagement with a kiss, Victoria met him halfway, her heart overflowing with happiness she had never thought to find again after Jasper's betrayal. Their tender moment was interrupted by a sharp pain that caused Victoria to gasp and clutch her abdomen. "Victoria," Finn's expression immediately shifted to concern. "I think," Victoria began before another pain cut off her words. "I think the baby's coming." Finn's eyes widened momentarily before calm determination replaced his alarm. "All right, let's get you back to town and Dr. Wallace." The journey back to Cripple Creek seemed interminable to Victoria as her labor pains increased in frequency and intensity. Finn drove the buggy with careful speed, murmuring reassurances whenever a particularly strong contraction made her cry out. They went directly to Dr. Wallace's office, where the physician quickly confirmed that Victoria's labor had indeed begun. And progressing rapidly, he added after a brief examination. This little one seems eager to meet the world. Should we move her to the boarding house? Finn asked anxiously, Doctor. Wallace shook his head. No time, the baby will be born here. He looked at Finn appraisingly. Will you stay? Most men prefer to wait elsewhere, but I'm staying, Finn stated firmly, taking Victoria's hand. If that's what Victoria wants. Through the pain, Victoria managed a nod. Please stay. What followed were the most challenging hours of Victoria's life. Her labor progressed with an intensity that left her gasping between contractions. Throughout it all, Finn remained steadfast beside her, wiping her brow with cool cloths, supporting her back when she needed to change positions, and whispering constant encouragement. You're the strongest woman I know, he told her as a particularly powerful contraction racked her body. You can do this, Victoria, I'm right here. As dawn broke over Cripple Creek, Victoria gave one final, tremendous push, and her child entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the small examination room. You have a son, Doctor. Wallace announced, quickly attending to the newborn before placing the swaddled infant in Victoria's arms. Victoria gazed down at her son's tiny face, overwhelmed by a love so powerful it took her breath away. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when he briefly opened his eyes, she caught a glimpse of deep blue. He's perfect, she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. Finn leaned close, his own eyes suspiciously bright as he studied the newborn. He is, he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. Absolutely perfect. Dr. Wallace busied himself with the necessary post-birth procedures, discreetly allowing the couple their moment of wonder. When he had finished, he said, You should both rest. I'll send word to Mrs. Wilkins and the Callahans. Once they were alone with the baby, Finn perched carefully on the edge of the bed, his gaze moving between Victoria and her son with open adoration. What will you name him? He asked softly. Victoria looked down at the sleeping infant, then back to Finn. I'd like to name him Elias after your father, Elias James Fairchild. She paused. Though I hope it won't be long before his name is Callahan. Finn's smile was radiant. Father will be honored beyond words. He hesitated before adding, I was thinking if you're willing, we could be married as soon as you've recovered. Right here in Dr. Wallace's parlor, if you don't want to wait until you can stand in church. I'd marry you this very moment if I could, Victoria replied, meaning every word. But a small ceremony here in a week or two would be perfect. Finn leaned forward to press a gentle kiss to her forehead, then to the baby's downy head. I never imagined when I rowed toward the Snake River crossing that day that I'd find my entire future waiting in the water. Victoria smiled tiredly. And I never imagined when I stood abandoned in that river that I was actually on the verge of being found. 2 weeks later, Victoria stood in Dr. Wallace's parlor wearing a simple but elegant ivory dress that Martha and Annabelle had worked tirelessly to create. Baby Elias, dressed in a christening gown made from one of Finn's childhood shirts, slept peacefully in Martha's arms as Judge Wilkins prepared to conduct the ceremony. The room was filled with the people who had become Victoria's new family in the brief time since her arrival in Cripple Creek, the Callahans. Dr. Wallace, Mrs. Wilkins, and a few close friends from town. Even Finn's young niece and nephews were present, with Emma proudly serving as flower girl. When Finn entered, looking handsome and somewhat nervous in his best suit, Victoria's heart swelled with love and gratitude. Their eyes met across the small room, and in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that the terrible day at the river crossing had actually been the first day of the rest of her life. Judge Wilkins spoke the traditional words of the marriage ceremony, but added his own personal touch. What brings us here today is more than just the union of two people. It's a testament to how true love can find us in our darkest moments, how family is formed not just by blood but by choice and commitment, and how this community embraces all who come to us with honest hearts. When it came time for their vows, Finn took Victoria's hands in his. I, Finn Callahan, take you, Victoria, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to cherish and respect you, to care for you and Elias as my own family, to be faithful and true all the days of my life. I vow to remember always that the greatest blessing of my life began the day I found you standing in that river. Tears glistened in Victoria's eyes as she responded, I, Victoria Fairchild, take you, Finn, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love and honor you, to build our family with joy and gratitude, to be your partner and friend through whatever life brings us. I vow to remember always that when I thought all was lost, you waded into the current and carried me home. As Judge Wilkins pronounced them husband and wife, Finn drew Victoria into a tender kiss that held both promise and fulfillment. The small gathering erupted in applause, startling baby Elias awake. Rather than crying, however, he simply blinked his blue eyes and yawned, seeming perfectly content amid the celebration of his new family. The wedding feast that followed at the Callahan Ranch was a joyous affair, with neighbors bringing dishes to share and musicians playing lively tunes that had many guests dancing well into the evening. Victoria, though still recovering from childbirth, found herself filled with an energy born of pure happiness as she moved among her new community, Elias cradled securely in her arms. When twilight descended, Finn escorted his new wife and son to the waiting buggy decorated with ribbons and flowers by Annabelle's children. Ready to go home, Mrs. Callahan? He asked, the new name bringing a smile to both their faces. More ready than I've ever been for anything, Victoria replied. Their arrival at the cabin was marked by a charming surprise Martha, Annabelle, and several of the women from town had transformed the interior with fresh curtains, quilts, and all the necessities for a new mother and baby. A beautiful sign hung above the door, hand-carved by Elias Sr., reading The Callahan Family ESD, 1876. As they settled Elias into his cradle, the same one that had held Finn as an infant, Victoria felt a profound sense of rightness. This cabin, this land, this man, they were her home now, in a way that nowhere and no one had ever been before. Later that night, as they stood on the porch watching stars appear in the vast Colorado sky, Finn wrapped his arms around Victoria from behind, careful not to press too tightly against her still healing body. Happy, he murmured against her hair. Victoria leaned back into his embrace, savoring his warmth and strength. Completely, are you? More than I ever thought possible, Finn replied honestly. I used to wonder why I felt so restless, why the ranch work that satisfied my father never seemed quite enough for me. Now I understand. I was waiting for you and Elias, waiting to start our family. Victoria turned in his arms to face him, her heart overflowing with emotion. Do you know what I thought when you carried me across that river? Beyond the relief and gratitude, Finn shook his head, curious. I thought that for the first time since leaving Philadelphia, I felt safe. Not just physically safe, but, she searched for the right words, safe in my soul, as though I'd found the harbor I didn't know I was searching for. Finn's eyes softened as he gently cupped her face in his calloused hands. And I knew, the moment I set you down on solid ground, that I just carried the most precious cargo I'd ever hold, he smiled. Until Elias, that is. From inside the cabin came the first whimpers of their son awakening for his evening feeding. Victoria pressed a quick kiss to Finn's lips before moving to attend to the baby. As she lifted Elias from his cradle and settled into the rocking chair beside the hearth, Finn built up the fire to ward off the mountain evening's chill. Watching her husband move about their home with quiet competence, Victoria marveled at the journey that had brought her here. The Philadelphia schoolteacher who had set out with such naive hopes had endured abandonment and fear, only to find authentic love and community in this rugged mountain town. Finn came to kneel beside the rocking chair, placing a gentle hand on his son's dark head as the baby nursed contentedly. I was thinking, he said softly, once the schoolhouse is finished and you're teaching, we might need to expand the cabin a bit. Add a proper nursery for Elias and maybe room for more children someday, if you want that. Victoria's heart warmed at his words and the future they painted. I'd like that very much, she replied. Though perhaps we should wait until Elias is walking before we think about giving him siblings, Finn chuckled, leaning up to press a kiss to her forehead. We have all the time in the world now, he said. Our whole lives ahead of us. As Elias drifted back to sleep in her arms, Victoria knew with unshakable certainty that the river that had nearly claimed her life had instead delivered her exactly where she was meant to be in this cabin, with this man, at the beginning of their life together. Yes, she whispered, gazing at her husband with eyes full of promise. Our whole lives together. And in that moment, in the quiet warmth of their first night as a family, Victoria and Finn Callahan found the peace and belonging that comes from weathering a storm and finding shelter in each other's hearts. 5 years later, Victoria Callahan stood at the window of the expanded cabin, watching her husband and son walk hand in hand across the pasture toward the barn. At 5 years old, Elias was the spitting image of Finn in miniature, from his confident stride to the way he gestured animatedly while telling some story that had Finn throwing his head back in laughter. Behind her, 2-year-old Charlotte played contentedly on a quilt spread before the hearth, her golden curls so like Victoria's own catching the morning sunlight. The third Callahan child, not yet visible to the world, stirred beneath Victoria's hand as she absently rubbed her 5 months pregnant belly. Life had unfolded with a fullness that sometimes left Victoria breathless with gratitude. The Cripple Creek School had flourished under her guidance, growing from 12 students that first year to nearly 30 now, necessitating an assistant teacher. She still taught 3 days a week, with Finn or Martha watching the children on those days. The Callahan Ranch had prospered as well. Finn and his father had expanded their operation, adding sheep to their cattle, which had proven a wise decision when silver prices fluctuated. The cabin where Victoria had come as a bride was now a proper family home, with additions that Finn had built himself as their family grew. A soft knock at the door interrupted Victoria's reflections. She opened it to find Martha Callahan, arms laden with a basket of fresh bread and preserves. "Thought you might like these for supper," Martha said, entering with the comfortable familiarity of frequent visits. Elias Sr.'s bringing a side of beef later. That boy of yours declared to his grandfather that he's going to need plenty of meat to grow as tall as his papa. Victoria laughed, taking the basket. He's determined to be Finn's shadow in every way. Yesterday he asked when he could start breaking horses. Martha chuckled as she scooped up Charlotte, who had toddled over with arms raised. And what did Finn say to that? That perhaps we should start with something smaller, like the new kittens in the barn. Victoria shook her head fondly. He's so patient with Elias's endless questions and eagerness. Martha settled in the rocking chair with Charlotte, studying her daughter-in-law with knowing eyes. He's the father he always hoped to be, and you've given him that gift, a family of his own to cherish. Victoria's throat tightened with emotion. He's given me just as much, a home, acceptance, love. She glanced out the window again, where Finn was now hoisting Elias onto his shoulders. Sometimes I still wake in the night and marvel at how differently my life could have turned out. Have you ever heard anything more of Jasper? Martha asked carefully. It was a subject rarely mentioned in the Callahan household. Victoria shook her head. Nothing since that letter 3 years ago. The letter had come from Denver, where Jasper had apparently fallen on hard times after the silver claim he'd staked proved worthless. He had written asking for money, claiming some right to know his biological son. Finn had been prepared to ride to Denver then and there, but Victoria had calmly penned a reply declining any assistance and making it clear that Elias had a father, the man who had chosen him, not the man who had abandoned him. Just as well, Martha said firmly. That man forfeited any right to call himself Elias's father the moment he left you in that river. The sound of boots on the porch heralded Finn and Elias's return. The boy burst through the door first, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mama, Papa says I can help with the new foal. He says I'm old enough if I'm very careful and listen to everything he says." Elias's blue eyes, so like Victoria's own, sparkled with anticipation. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Victoria replied, smoothing his tousled dark hair. "What a big responsibility." Finn entered behind his son, removing his hat and hanging it on the peg by the door. "He's got a gentle touch with animals," he said proudly. That little foal took to him right away. His gaze moved to Victoria, and even after 5 years of marriage, she still felt a flutter in her heart at the love shining in his eyes. He crossed to her, placing one hand on her rounded belly and the other at the small of her back as he drew her close for a kiss. "How are you feeling today?" he asked quietly, his concern evident. "Wonderful," she assured him. "Better than with either of the others at this stage." Martha rose from the rocking chair, setting Charlotte down. "Well, I should head back to the main house. Your father's likely wondering where I've gotten to." After Martha's departure, the family gathered around the kitchen table for the midday meal. Victoria watched the easy interaction between Finn and Elias, the way Charlotte beamed when her father praised her for using her spoon correctly, and felt a profound contentment settle over her. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Victoria and Finn sat on the porch swing that had been his gift to her on their first anniversary. The autumn air carried a hint of the winter to come, but wrapped in a quilt and her husband's embrace, Victoria was perfectly warm. "I had a letter from the territorial superintendent today," she told Finn as they gazed at the star-filled sky. "He's visiting schools throughout the region and wants to observe our methods in Cripple Creek. Apparently, our students' achievements have drawn attention." Finn squeezed her shoulders gently. "That doesn't surprise me one bit. You're a remarkable teacher." "I've been thinking," Victoria said after a comfortable silence. "What would you think about adding a room to serve as a proper study? Somewhere I could prepare lessons and perhaps write that curriculum guide the superintendent mentioned." Finn considered this, his expression thoughtful. "I think that's an excellent idea, perhaps off the east side of the house. It would get good morning light." Victoria nodded, loving the way he immediately envisioned how to make her idea reality. It had been that way throughout their marriage. Dreams shared became plans made, with each supporting the other's aspirations alongside their family's needs. "You know what today is?" Finn asked suddenly. Victoria tilted her head, mentally reviewing the date. Understanding dawned. "The anniversary of the day we met. 5 years since the river crossing." Finn nodded, his arms tightening around her. 5 years since I found everything I never knew I was looking for, standing knee-deep in water and looking like a drowned cat." He chuckled as Victoria swatted his arm playfully. "Charming," she retorted. "Is that how you remember your future wife, as a drowned cat?" "No," Finn replied, his tone shifting to one of tender sincerity. "I remember a woman with more courage than anyone I'd ever met, standing there in that rushing water, abandoned and afraid but still fighting, still determined." Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder, remembering. "I was terrified," she admitted, "not just of drowning but of what would become of me, of us." She placed a hand on her belly, thinking of the unborn Elias she had been carrying then. "When I saw you step into that river," she continued softly, "it wasn't just relief I felt, it was recognition somehow, as though some part of me knew that you were my future even then." Finn's hand covered hers. "I felt it too. Couldn't have named it at the time, but I knew you were someone I couldn't simply help across the river and then continue on my way." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Best detour I ever took." Victoria turned her face up to his, her heart overflowing with love for this man who had waded into troubled waters and changed the course of her life forever. "I love you, Finn Callahan, more with each passing day." Finn's kiss was gentle yet filled with the depth of feeling that had grown between them through 5 years of shared joys, challenges, and the daily work of building a life together. When they parted, his eyes held hers in the silver moonlight. "And I love you, Victoria Callahan. You and our children are the greatest blessing I could have ever asked for." As they sat together under the vast Colorado sky, the cabin warm with sleeping children behind them and the promise of their next child growing beneath their joined hands, Victoria knew that the river that had once nearly claimed her life had instead delivered her exactly where she belonged, in the arms of the man who had carried her not just across those turbulent waters, but into a life richer and more fulfilling than she had ever dared to dream.